Hey guys, my name is Michelle Palacio. I am the owner and creator of Shadow Design Collective. I have been with and playing with jewelry since I was about 10 years old. I have a very eclectic background of artists. My mom's a graphic art designer. My brother is also very artistically inclined, as well as my other siblings. I myself and my family grew up on the West Coast, born in Orange County, and I had the privilege of moving here when I was about 16, graduated high school in Massachusetts. I have traveled, considered myself kind of a gypsy, traveled around 72 times, opening restaurants around the U.S., from Santa Fe to Nantucket, Bethesda, Maryland. And I've been blessed to have met quite a few amazing artists as well as various eclectic minds. I consider myself very lucky to have been able to have learned and grown with so many people. And my intention here is to give you a little bit of a tutorial on what it is I create. I wanted you to understand why it is I create. Shadow Design was my dog. I got her in Santa Fe. She was with us for 13 years, or me, I should say, for 13 years. 2 years ago, had to put her down, but she's also represents rebirth for me. It was a time in my life where it was time to change. When I hit my 40s, I decided to get out of the restaurant business and open my own business and follow my passions. So let's get started. I'm going to show you today how to make my signature bracelet and my signature rings. Ideally, this is what we want to continue creating, and this is just a demo to give you an idea of how I would like them to be created moving forward. And hopefully you enjoy this. Questions? Throw them at me. All right, so basically what I'm going to be showing you is the signature bracelets. So these are two examples. This one here is going to be your rose quartz. What we're going to be basically learning is how to create the clasp. So everything from these spirals, which is my signature, all the way to how to create the circular, as well as the ending clasp. It tends to be a huge seller. Every woman seems to be able to get this on and off fairly efficiently, which is why I have continually stuck with it. So this is the design. As you can see, it's looped around each bead each time it goes around. And then I'm also going to show you how to create the signature ring. Now, the great thing about this ring is you can basically create any design you like. It's a matter of wrapping it around at the top, tucking it under, and then just making sure that it's comfortable for whomever's wearing it. And I do create these when I'm out and about. They're quite beautiful, actually. So this rose quartz. So these are just examples. Today we're going to be using, here we have our agate. This is going to be a dragon vein agate. As you can see, they come in a plethora of colors. I just wanted to show you a little bit closer here. So with these guys, as you can see with the variety, what I like to do is I like to focus on when I'm making a ring, I get the prettiest colors I can find. So these two I'm going to put aside for the ring, in case I want to make two, for examples. Otherwise, we have 9 beads here. So we have 9 of the agate, which we're going to put off to the side. And then we're going to also do 8. 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And the spacers. So these can be any style of spacers. The one thing you're going to want to bear in mind is the size of them. So each size is going to be considered a bead. When you're doing the particular size of each bracelet, the 17 centimeters is basically what we're working with, or the halfway point, or 18 is the largest. So when you're doing these, it tends to make the bracelet a little bit bigger. That example, as you can see, is here. So with these guys, they don't take as much space up, so they don't really count as much as a bead, which is why there's more beads on this one when it comes to the gemstones than there are on the other. So bearing that in mind, this is what the count's going to be. So it's 9 and 8, 8 and 8, or 9 and 8, excuse me. Your utensils that you're going to be using are, pull this out a little bit. All right, so we have our 2 gauges here. We have our 20 and our 22 gauge wires. These are both silver encased wires. As you can see, it has this beautiful sheen to it, which is very gorgeous. These are 6 circular tool creating tools, basically. So you have 6 different shapes of circles that you can use. It's very, very helpful when creating anything when it comes to jewelry. Then you have your needle nose pliers here, your others. We have our cutters, and then we also have our nylon straighteners. These I like to use, and it tends to be almost a I want to say like a wax feeling to it. There are nylon ones that are a lot stronger and harder, which I don't suggest because they're harder to utilize. So as we're going along, let's get this started and I will show you exactly how to create this. All right, so first things first is you're going to take your 20 gauge. So with your 20 gauge, you're going to cut 13 millimeters, so it's a little more than a foot, and that's going to be your base. So your base is 20 gauge. Then you're also going to take your 22 gauge and you're going to cut 36 millimeters, of wire. So basically it's count out 18, split it in half, and then create it like this. So you can just pinch it off, and it pinches off like that. Then you want to get your pliers, and then the flat nose pliers, basically. You can use the flat nose or the tips, and you just want to pinch it in between your fingers a little bit. You want to kind of close this gap just slightly. Sorry, I'm not showing you, but you just want to close the gap a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just want to be able to have a little bit of room there. As you can see, it just kind of pinches off a little bit, but that's okay. You just pull it together like this. And this wire has a tendency to bounce back at you, so do be careful. You don't want to hurt yourself. Now, you can put this one aside for the moment. So we're just going to put that one aside, and we're going to go back to our 20 gauge. So with this one, you want to pick up your multi-circle tool. I know it's got a specific name. I don't know it offhand, but you're going to take your second largest. So it's going to be this one. As you can see, this is the largest. There's your second largest, right? You're going to give yourself about 1.5 inches, and you're going to put it right between, like so. But you want it to be all the way down. So you want it to be down here. And then you want to make sure you've got enough space because you're going to be creating the circle out of this too. So you can push them together like so. You can pull one way, but however you want to do it, you just want to loop it around. And you pull them tight together like that. So once they're tight together, easiest thing to do is you just flip them over each other, kind of like that, right? Now it's sturdy, so you can take it off of your tool, and this is what you end up with, okay? So it's very simple. We're going to spin this back over one more time. Because if you're doing it for the first couple of times, one of the easiest thing to do is just hold the circle like that. You hold that and then you push it around. That way it keeps it sturdy and then you don't end up ruining it. So I usually do it twice. Feel free to do it 3 times if you so desire. Keeping it uniformed, let's try to do it twice. Now it's on the opposite side. So flip this over. You're going to pull this edge, right? And you can pull it into you however which way you want to do this, if you're lefty, righty, whichever one works best. But you just swirl it around like this. And you want it to get as close to the edge as you can. I'm trying to get that into focus for you. But yeah, very simple. It's just a loop. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. Now you want to do it twice with the needle nose. And the reason you only want to do it twice is because you want to keep it aligned so it stays in there. Now you grab the flat nose and you just gently start spinning it towards yourself. And it kind of moves with you and it stays flat this way. So you don't have to keep messing with it. If you use the needle nose, it takes a little bit longer. Now you follow it in and you want to make sure it ends up on the side that it's supposed to. As you can see, boop. It'll end up on the top. Like so. And you just spin it around. And it's simple, pretty. And that's basically just how it ends. Straighten this out. Now we're going to pull the beads over that we're going to be using. So we're going to use those guys and these guys here. All right, so you're going to grab the other wire, which is your 22 gauge, 36 inches. Now we've created this little hole here, as we saw. Now, of course, keep being careful not to whip it into your face. I've done it before. You can do this two ways. You can either come at it from underneath and just slide it through like that, or of course you can pull it through. But either way, point is to just get it to there. You want to face the circle up with a spiral facing towards you. You put this right next to it. They're movable and they can get around each other. But what we're going to do is, what I like to do is so we're going to take a bead, but as you can see, there's a bunch of different shades. So what I like to do is I take one of the darker ones and then I go with one of the lighter ones and then one of the dark, one of the light. So I usually start with a bead. You could do a bead first or a spacer. It's completely up to you, not particular, but you want to end with whichever one you start with. So we're going to start with a bead. And we're going to put the agate on. And just put it right up close. You're going to wrap these two wires just around the outskirts of it, like this. Pulling it down. The first one's a little tricky. It's really not that difficult, though. If you just hold it there, and then you hold the other side. You can use your nails if you want, whatever floats your boat. And you, oops, sorry. Of course, I make it look easy, right? And you flip it. The wires can be a little tough, especially the first one, but it usually goes with knots and anything else. It's usually the first one that's the hardest. So that little sucker goes over. Now keep an eye on your wires. You don't want them to crisscross either. So just keep an eye on those as you continually go along. It'll kind of guide you and show you which way the wires want to go. Just pay attention to it because you don't want it to get too mangled. So we've got it wrapped around once. I do it twice. I always do it twice just because it gives a little extra space. And you want the wire to end up on the opposite side of the loop. So, such as that, right? So the wire comes from the bottom over, and then we're going to go with, quiet sweetie, a spacer. So with the spacer, that's there, right? And then we're just going to loop around the same way we did with the bead. Each wires, that's why this dead soft can be a lot more pliable. The wire is very malleable in most cases. It's just a matter of utilizing your extra arm strength. But yeah, so this is where we're going right now. Let me pull you in a little bit closer. It's fairly simple to see. It just goes up and around, up and around, up and around. And we're just going to keep doing this for a while now. There we go. That gives it a little bit better for you. All right, we're going to pull it out just a bit, and then we're just going to keep going. Now, again, I did a little bit of a lighter one to start, so I'm going to go with a darker one here. and up and around. Your hands will just start doing it like anything. You'll get used to it. And then you keep beading. So I'm going to keep doing this for a little while until we get to about the end. And then what I'll do is we'll go over exactly how to create the finished part of the clasp. So up, over, around, and opposite side. Okay. And let me get a little work done and I shall return. Okay, so we've made it this far. As you can see, there's 8 beads on here so far for the agate. We have the 1 left over. This is where it gets to be the point where I will show you the clasp. Now, we don't want to put the bead on, actually, let's first go back here. So this is what we started with, this color. This is what I have left for a coloration. Now, I love it. It's beautiful, but it's kind of going to throw it off a bit. So I'm going to find another one. And I think that one suits it. So let's put that one on. And now it's just going to sit there. What we're going to do here is we're going to take this part of it. This is what's going to create the clasp for it. Straighten this out a little bit. All right, so our clasp, we're going to take this. Our clasp is going to be half the size of wherever it is you bend. So I'm going to start here. That's about an inch, I guess. You bend it over like so. You can tighten this one up just like we did in the beginning. Just a tad, just to keep it even. And this is obviously starting to make shape for what it is we are about to create. So push that end in a little, and this is what we get. So it starts to be created like this. We got one side on there, one side there. Now the bead's still loose, but we need to wrap it twice. But we also want to encompass this part of it so it stays sturdy and we won't have to worry about the clasp later on. So we wrap it around just like we were doing the whole time, but we're just doing it around here. Now, bearing in mind, it is a little movable, obviously. So if you feel like you have the ability to hold it, you can, and then flip it over. I find that a little bit difficult, but dexterity is to each. So I just go along with it. Now, we're going to wrap that the same twice. There's two things we can do right now. First and foremost, you want to make sure that this is facing up, okay, when you spin it. And you're going to spin it. It's, as I said, it's very malleable, easily movable, easily retainable. So you want to make sure that it's the full 17, because it does matter in the long run. When people are inquiring about it, you know, like, what's the size? How does this fit? So it reaches around. Now I'll show you the opposite side of this. So this is 17 right here, and it's going to be perfect. It's going to work out just fine, but let me show you how to finish this off. So your two options are here. This one here is what ideally we're going to create the circular signature with, because it's 20 gauge. It's more sturdy. It's as sturdy as what's holding the whole thing together. So this is ideally what you want to use. There are occasions in which I don't cut it long enough and I don't have enough in order to create that spiral. So then I can always utilize these. But being that they're 22 gauge, they are thinner and they're not as easy. And you end up only being able to use one of them. So you have to cut one. We will be cutting them anyway. So since we have enough here, we're going to work with this and create the spiral. So just like we did in the very beginning, you can choose to do it any which way you'd like. I pull it towards myself. That's just easy for me, or easier, I guess. And you want to make sure it circles all the way around. And you can keep it in there, bring it back around. You just want to make sure it doesn't go over the edge. That's all. And the best way to do that is to get your flat nose and push it down and then spin it. Just like we did in the beginning. Now, the best thing to do is to not finish that all the way off yet, because we still have all of this hanging off. So we're going to wrap this around individually. First, we're going to chop them. Oop, I'm going to get my cutters. And you're going to cut them down to whatever is comfortable for you. I usually cut them to about here. Then we've got two stray pieces. You don't want anybody to get hurt with them, so we're going to take care of these. First things that I like to do with them is curve the edges first. So when you curve the edges, at least you know from the next move, you will be able to make sure that nobody gets hurt from it. So then you can take your pliers and do whatever it is you need to. A lot of times they can be tucked in underneath. But because we already have something going on over it, a lot of times I just do this. And then you get that. So everything's tucked in. Nothing's going to poke anybody. You can rub your hands over it on all sides. Nothing's sticking out. You want to make sure that that happens every single time. So at this one, it's fairly simple. All you do is you take the end, you pull it in towards you, and you take the very end and you flip it up. Then you pull it together, even her out, and there you go. Pure gemstones, really nice silver, handmade. We create the clasps ourselves. Absolutely beautiful. All right, now since we're already sitting here, we are going to make a ring. Now, in order to make a ring, you're going to take the same 20 gauge and you're going to cut basically a foot. You cut 1 foot out of it, right? with that, you want to pick, of all of the beads you have, you want to pick the one that actually suits you the best for the colorations. Now, bearing in mind with the rings, the great thing is that the gemstone that goes in between them moves around in there. So you really want to get something with a lot of color that has like different tones in it, so that you can really see how beautiful the gemstone is. And I think this one is the one that really catches my eye. So we're going to go with you. All right, first things first, you're going to need your mandrel. Your mandrel, there's a bunch of different styles. I do suggest getting the pure like stainless steel, almost like baton style. You don't want anything that has an indent down the middle. There are quite a few that have indents, and those just, they don't work for pretty much most things. So when you're making rings, you want to make sure that you have the sturdiest one possible and that it's completely round. So you take your foot of 20 gauge here, and you take the bead of choice, whichever one you decide that you'd like, and slip it on. Get it right down, as you can imagine, right down in the middle. Whichever middle works for you. I usually do it this way. And then you bring your gemstone down to the bottom. This seems to be the simplest way to do it. Hold it there. And then you're going to be pulling these both down just a little bit. So you're basically creating like a fishtail, but you want the gem to be boxed in. So you want both sides to have the same effect. You want them to be kind of like that, right? So that way it stops either side from like falling off or something like that. So I'll show you how this is done. You stick it on your mandrel, you pick the size. A lot of times I usually work with 6, 7, and 8. I do these to order as well when I'm out selling. So then I get people's sizes, and that seems to go over really well. People enjoy that a lot. So I would too. So you've got it here, you've already bent it, you've put it onto the space where you decide that you want it. Now you're just gonna, it's very simple. You just take both sides, you wrap them around. You wanna make sure that they don't crisscross in the back, if you can help it. Sometimes that does happen, it's not the end of the world. But it's good to just keep an eye on it. It doesn't have to happen, so try not to let it happen. It tends to create divots in the ring, and it doesn't fit as well. All right, so first you do one wrap. It's completely up to you. I normally, when I'm out and about, I just do the one wrap, so it has just the two sides. If you feel so that you want to, you have enough wire, you can cut extra wire, and then you can wrap it around 3, 4 times, whatever you'd like. But we're gonna do it, let's do it 2 here. Then you're gonna take the one side, whichever side you want. You're gonna hold on to the other one, hold everything really tight, and wrap it around the base of the bead, just like that. And as you can see, this one, it picked up on the lip that we created, which is kind of what we want, but you want to push it past it a little bit. So you want to pull your string or your wire as tight as possible and keep it as uniformed as you can. It will move around, but you only want to do one on one side, okay? So then you stop. You can hold on to it whichever way feels comfortable. This works for me. And you do the exact same thing on the opposite side. You want to go under this one. Just keep an eye on it. You go under that one and over. And this one's going to go right over here. Now we stop. Now, when you take it off of here, this is what we're looking at. Okay, so it's a little encompassed in, it's almost kind of like a, well, it would be a bezel had we not, it not been a bead with a hole in it. It would be something that encompasses the bead. So there's, as I said, there's many different styles of this. You can tighten it, you can make it looser, you can do it with a different V. But either way, we're going to finish this one off. Now, here it is, okay? So each one of these is hanging on either side. What we're going to be doing is putting it through on both sides. So it's going to go through the ring. Seeing as they're long like that, a lot of times what I do is I chop them down just a tad. You don't want to take too much off because you are going to be utilizing it. But I take them down just a bit. And then I start to just do this. I use my fingers a lot for things because I have a better grip of what's going on. But once I get it in there, that's when you utilize your tools. And you just pull it really tight and you make it really pretty. And that's where, depending on how many you've used, these have a tendency to jump over each other, as you can see. So if you keep an eye on it, it's best. There's tools that can straighten it, but a lot of times it's not the end of the world. It doesn't really affect the ring in any way. So you just keep doing this, and you want to do it even on both sides. So you don't want to finish off one side without starting another. That'll just make it lopsided. So you can use your pliers and pull it through if you want. Again, malleable. And this is when you stop for a second. As you can see, things are starting to move around. So everything's kind of like a little wonky. This is when you take advantage of your mandrel again. So you slip it on your mandrel. You make sure things are as even as possible on the back. You pull it tightly. And you just tighten it up a little bit. This way you know that you've got what you need. So you tighten it. There is a rubber hammer too that I have that helps out a lot, and you can hammer it. You just got to be careful not to hammer them too much because it'll break if they are crossed. All right, so continuing this, I usually go over it twice and then I chop it down. I take the end that's left over and I put it inside there. And as you can see, what happens is let's see if we can get this a little closer. A little too close. Either way, we'll get there eventually. And then you curve it in on the other side too. You do it twice, in there, chop it off. When I do these downtown or when I'm at a fair or anything like that, it takes me about 15 minutes to create them. I usually offer that to people if I'm not busy. When I start to get busy, I do stop offering it. So there's one style of it. Now, again, when you're creating these, for some reason, they always come out a little bit different. So depending on the bead. So there's a wraparound. It also depends on the wire too. So they all have a tendency to be a little bit different. Find the technique that works for you. Find which way works the best. And then, just go with it and figure out which ones you prefer to use. I like to keep everything pretty much uniformed so that we have very similar product throughout. But I do also encourage just, adventure and style adjustments and to keep things fresh and new. Collaboration being a necessity. Looking forward to working with you. Let me know if you have any questions, ideas, suggestions. Forward to learning together.